All right. Hey, everybody. We are loving LinkedIn very much today. Our poor producer, Tobias, sitting in Copenhagen. If you listen closely, especially if you're on the East Coast, if you'll take your ear and stick it out the window, listen faintly, you'll hear Danish curse words flying across the pond from Copenhagen right now as we try to figure out what's going on with LinkedIn Live. Again, this is a beta product, but we're using it. I mean, what the heck, right? Got to have something that you can go with. So we are going to start. We're going to get going in a minute. Please grab a cup of coffee, ping your friends, tell them to get on, and we will kick off with Jon Zanoff in just a minute. And thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Do you speak Danish, John?
I mean, I could come up with some curse words if it helps.
Good for you. I'm just going to, we should Google some curse words and just in Danish. And Tobias, on Slack, if you will send me some phonetically correct curse words in Danish, I would greatly appreciate it. We'll make sure we work them into the show today. Only running about 20 minutes late, so that's not bad. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the 6th episode of Fintech Insider, The Breakfast Show US. We might want to call this the Brunch Show US since we're supposed to be doing this at 10:30. That would be brunch, I think is safe to say. This is the show from the folks from 11FS, bringing you interesting insights into the fintech and banking landscape. We're changing the schedule slightly. We'll now be coming to you every day at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. For our British friends, that is 3:30 p.m. For our European friends, that is 2:30 p.m. Everyone else, it's some 30 p.m. I'm Sam Maule, 11FS Managing Director North America. I'll be your host for this show. The idea is that we're all cooped up. Thank you, Corona, for that. For the next, weeks, months, we don't know. So we wanted to give you a way to kick off your day, talk to some of the most interesting people in the fintech and banking space, and get their perspective on what's happening in fintech, what's happening in banking, what are we seeing take place during this incredibly fascinating time. So today we're kicking the week off. We're being joined by Jon Zanoff. He's the founder of Empire Startups. How do I describe John better than I did last week? John, I believe I called you the bald CrossFit King motorcycle godfather of fintech in New York. I think that's what I called you. We're going to go with that. You still good with that title?
You had me at Maniac.
CrossFit Maniac. John is the most in shape person in fintech, has been for the past 6 months. I'm very proud of you, John, for that. You are in New York, are you not?
I'm in Gotham, safe and sound, quarantined in a small shoebox.
Are you Batman? I'm in Gotham.
Maybe. I'd probably prefer that to CrossFit Maniac, especially since I don't do CrossFit. But I'm just happy to be here. And you know what? I really appreciate the work 11FS is doing. Live streaming is why Murphy's Law was invented. And the fact that you jumped out straight away, starting this every single morning on both sides of the pond is just tremendous for the community. So thanks for doing it, and thanks for having me.
It's not a problem. I am sure just about everybody who's on or watching this, or if you're around fintech in New York, you know John, you know Empire Startups. But for Europe, for some of the folks, say, across the U.S., can you kind of describe, one, why did you go about setting up Empire Startups? What is it, and what's the reach, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So Empire Startups is the largest community of fintech entrepreneurs in the world. It was started very humbly back in 2011, just as a fintech meetup in New York, and so truly grew out of the startup ecosystem. We're now known, flash forward to 2020, like I said, the largest community of fintech entrepreneurs, but we're known for a couple of things. We're known for pulling the entire global community together for New York FinTech Week. We're known as the only large-scale conference at gender parity. So from a diversity perspective, we're the only ones truly reflecting what the future of fintech is going to look like. And lastly, we invented startup pricing. So there are a lot of conferences out there that, there's nothing wrong with being a profitable business, but you don't need to take advantage of the startup ecosystem. And so Empire Startups was the first out there saying, we're not going to make any money on startups. And since then, you've seen just about every conference out there start to charge reasonable amounts of money for entrepreneurs, which we're very proud to have driven.
And what I'm really proud of, for those that are watching this live, feel free to add in any comments that you want. If you do think that Jon Zanoff is Batman, please let's go ahead and get a vote thing going in the comment section. If you have questions, especially around startups, entrepreneurship, right now, you've got, in my opinion, pull your earplugs out, John, because I'm going to give you a compliment. Probably one of the best resources you can talk to. Somebody that's been around this from the early days, that really does understand what it takes to get going in this, has led multiple classes through accelerators when he was at Barclays. This is a good resource to ask questions to. And not surprisingly, Alex Gillette is already writing comments. Shocking. Alex, we love you, man. I'm not surprised. Thank you for tuning in and being part of this. So again, fill up the comments. We will get to them as we go through this. And Dan from London, thank you for joining. Dan's been here, I think, for every show at this part. So, John, I've got to ask, you're in New York. You've been on lockdown for a while. And this is going to be hard to summarize because I know the situation is changing daily. But how has COVID and what we're going through impacted? Let's start with the New York fintech scene. Now, I know that's a tough question, but how would you summarize it?
It is a tough question. I think entrepreneurs everywhere, not just New York, but entrepreneurs everywhere are really struggling. Entrepreneurship is tremendously difficult in any circumstance. Putting everything, the pressure to stay efficient, to be working as hard as you can, to be doing everything you can, to be tracking your KPIs, to be firing on all cylinders. And then you add on top of that remote work, and when the health and safety of your family and friends are at risk, it's just a really, really difficult time. And so, now is an absolute essential time to be thinking about mental health and to be supporting your team, your friends, and your family as probably a priority, not probably, definitely a priority, significantly above, fintech or the tech ecosystem in general. The good news is, community is a nebulous concept, but the fact that you now have an 11FS morning show to tune into every single morning, where you have experts coming in for support, to share ideas, to ask questions. I mean, that's the power of community. And that's how I know New York and every startup ecosystem around the world is gonna come out of this stronger.
I don't know about you. We talked about this before the show, just about being locked down, right? And obviously you live in New York, so you've been under this for a while. I think I've shared it multiple times on these live streams. I'm pretty sure my son had COVID very early, near my 14-year-old son, very young. So I've been locked down for about a month with my family. I'm going stir crazy. John knows me. I can't sit through a meeting. I barely make it through the 30 minutes that we do this. I mean, my ADD just kicks in. So it's very tough for me. And the fact that I'm not out on a plane going to New York or to London or San Francisco meeting with people has really gotten to me. So this concept of community is something I embrace wholeheartedly. We're trying some unique things at 11FS around that to see how we can continue to stay engaged with everybody and do like virtual bar hangouts or virtual dinners to get people together. But I like that you touched on the mental health side of this. I don't think we talk about that enough. This is a strain on everybody. It's a strain being stuck indoors. It's a strain not being able to manage your business face to face with your teams.
Especially for the founders out there, the founders and the CEO at the top. It's lonely at the top, where you're responsible for driving forward, for always being optimistic, for always keeping your eyes on your North Star as a company. But again, the reality is we're all hurting, we're all suffering right now. And so how can you leverage the community? It's not just joining stuff like this, but feel free to reach out to myself, to Sam, to anyone. I think everyone has a little bit more time for Zoom meetings right now to just engage with an entrepreneur that's struggling. That's what venture capitalists around the world are doing right now, is supporting their portfolios. So if anyone wants to chat, brainstorm, or just talk about Netflix, we're here for you. So feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter.
This is going to become part of accelerated classes. I think I talked about this with my interview with Nikki, one of the co-founders of Nova Credit, where contingency planning, right? If I'm a VC and I'm going in and I'm talking to a startup that's coming up, I know this is massive now for banks and everyone else, but I guess pandemic now gets added to the list of things of how do you manage through that. Yeah, I can almost see this as becoming some sort of black swan event through accelerated classes, right? Of how are you set up to manage this, remotely? How do you get your teams going? But I think the thing that really strikes me, and John, you're closer to this than I would ever be, being able to really push through your product and into beta and get it into the hands of customers when you're in a virtual lockdown like we are, that's challenging.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I'm actually excited about. I think you're going to see fintech companies with significantly more sophistication just in terms of product, in terms of lines of code written coming out of lockdown and coming out of this pandemic. I mean, what should a fintech company focus on right now? It's focusing on your core business. And so, we talk a lot on the 11FS podcast and others about these lofty valuations and folks selling vaporware and raising money just on an idea. And in 12 months, you're going to have fantastic entrepreneurs that come out of not really stealth, but certainly not out in the market pounding the pavement with products that are significantly more mature and sophisticated than I think previous few generations. So that's something exciting for both consumers, but also investors.
Yeah, it's a good question, actually, from a founder. Sid Rahara is tuned into every single one of these. I love this guy, and he's always asked great questions in every single one of these. We're going to get you on the damn show. You've been too good. He's been too good. The quality of questions. Yeah, normally you don't get good questions, especially when I slaughter his first name and surname on every show. But he did it again. And I think this ties into what you just said, John, but I want you to think about this just a little bit. His question is, what's the advice you're giving startups given the end game for COVID is still up in the air? Because we don't know, right? We don't know if this is a May, a June, a August, a September. What if we go through multiple cycles of this? So when you're looking at your startup founders, what advice would you give them with respect to that? Good question.
It's a great question. My first answer is going to be directed towards those startups that are domiciled in the U.S. A lot of folks are talking about the CARE Act and specifically PPP, which applications opened on Friday. And the advice on previous shows were to look into it. My advice is going to be hopefully a little bit more direct, which is that if you haven't applied for PPP, candidly, you may want to close down this morning show and get on that. What PPP is doing is it's giving every small business 2.5 months of runway. It's giving you the ability to extend your payroll, keep your team on board, or pay them for another 2.5 months. It's a 2.5 month, DVR pause button on your burn rate. And so absolutely do it now. There are the SBA lenders out there that are going to be hammered. There's also some exciting fintechs like Fundera and Lendio, which have access to a whole host of banks. So to the extent that some are overwhelmed with applications, they'll know exactly which banks are taking applications and which banks are inundated. And so please just pause. That'll be my first advice. Extend your runway. The US government isn't often there for entrepreneurship, candidly, especially in the last few years. But the SBA loans are certainly going to help and PPP. So don't let today pass by without applying. There's some rumors that the $350 billion will run out, but I'm confident there's going to be more cash behind that. So, I mean, that's first and foremost. A lot of the most common question overall from all startups are, what's going to happen with valuations? What's going to happen with fundraising? And my immediate response for those asking about valuations is it's really the wrong question to be asking right now. Just for context, 10 years ago, seed valuations were $2 million on average. So they've gone up 400, 500, 600% in the last 10 years. That is a bubble that many in the industry were expecting to revert at some point, and this happens to be the time. That's not your valuation of a seed round is not what is going to prevent you from being successful. And so if you have investors that are considering investing money in your startup, take the money and run. Close that as soon as humanly possible, and simply be less price sensitive than you may have been otherwise. The other advice, though, if you haven't started fundraising, you're just considering about fundraising, this really isn't the time to start that process. So I'd encourage you just to hold. Now, the markets are up today. We have some good news globally with Spain and Italy seeing a bit of, hopefully cautiously optimistic, some flattening in the curve. New York on Saturday saw a dip. Maybe it's a blip, maybe it'll continue. So the markets are reacting pretty well, but we still are months, if not a year from recovery. And I wouldn't recommend starting that process. Instead, my recommendation would be chase revenue however you can, get as scrappy, become, as Sam called me, a maniac, be maniacal about chasing revenue. And that might mean pursuing something that bleeds from tech into consulting. It might mean bleeding into something that's a little bit less scalable for now. But your goal as a startup right now is to survive. It's not going to be easy, but hoard cash. And the folks who are going to win in fintech, but anywhere in entrepreneurship, are going to be the folks with the most capital, the most cash sitting in their business bank account in January of 2021.
So Tobias, I'm talking directly to our producer and Hannah. So Hannah is in London, Tobias is in Copenhagen. That 2-minute speech that Jon just gave now, that's our snippet that we put out on Twitter, and we get 1 million hits, because that in itself is what people that have gone through different accelerators have paid and applied for and killed themselves to hear. And I think right now that's some of the best advice you're possibly going to get. Starting with, if you haven't applied for PPP yet, what's wrong with you? Are you down with PPP? Yeah, you know. Hey, I was dying to get that in.
You had to. Yeah, I mean the dad jokes are involuntary at this point.
Oh my God,
which we understand.
I'm the ultimate dad of fintech. We all know that because I have more kids than just about everybody else. So we're gonna go with that. And I'm proud of that. So that dad joke was killing me. Another good question. That was a really good answer, by the way. I thought it was really good. Alex, Mr. Gillette. And I think this is a good question, and this applies to you, Jon, because one of the things that Jon has done with Empire Startups is the conferences that he has. So he had the New York FinTech conference scheduled. It was for the first week of April. You've delayed that to September now. Is that right?
October 14th.
October 14th. Yep. Okay. That is a fantastic way to really get face-to-face with some of the most exciting people, in my opinion, in this space. And Jon throws a great conference for that. But Alex asked a really good question about this, which is, how does this affect the digital aspect of events going forward? Instead of having physical events with a digital presence, it's a nice to have, does COVID reverse this and make future events digital first with the physical presence as a sweetener?
So listen, I'm actually a contrarian right now with regards to digital events, and this forum aside, the way that I see the 11FS breakfast show is this is part of healing and part of driving community through this. With that said, I'm not a big advocate, and you can write this in the sand and prove me wrong. And watch this. This will be the one that you'll watch moving forward. But I don't think we're going to see a proliferation of virtual events. I don't think that's what the market wants. I think, in fact, coming out of this, we're going to see Zoom become a bad word. It's going to be, please, for the love of God, don't effing Zoom me. I'd like to meet for coffee. I'd love to meet face to face. I always would say that 50% of coming to a conference is the networking.
Yes.
I think the market's the pendulum's gonna swing. We're gonna revert to a world where folks just want that face to face. They just want to shake a hand and get to know someone. And so my advice for entrepreneurs who are probably taking a lot more Zoom meetings than they would have, how can you prepare for the fact that the market is about to get really sick of virtual events, really sick of webinars, really sick of any type of online meeting? Don't forget to be a human. Don't forget, when you kick off a meeting, to ask somebody how they are. And Jeremy Shore from Grasshopper said it. If you ask them how they are and they start talking about their business, then pause them and say, no, how are you doing? How's your family doing? How are you coping in this environment? This is just no time in an all Zoom world to forget the necessity to be a human. So anyway, quick answer, Alex. I don't see us going digital. I see a couple events getting canceled and therefore quickly moving to a digital environment. But everything I'm hearing from the community is that that's just not what they're interested in.
Yeah, I'm in your boat on this. I am so sick of Zoom and Hangouts and WebExes right now.
Yep.
I'm sick of webinars. That's why we actually, one of the reasons we did this show and we try to keep it with that 11FS feel is no over prep. No, I don't have a screen behind me. We didn't green screen this with a virtual background. And no, Tobias, I will not green screen this with it. He's like, oh my God.
He's dying to,
sponsors here and here. Is keeping this as basic as possible. Was the concept behind it. Because I agree with you. I cannot wait for once to, I would actually be excited about going to Money 2020. Vegas. And I hate Vegas. But the fact to go see everybody, I do think whoever does the swag of face masks that are clear, so plastic, really well-fitting face masks that we can wear for those. And I'm actually not joking when I say that. So I know that somebody has come up with a face mask where the mouth is clear so that people that are hearing impaired or deaf can actually see the people's lips moving. And they're selling the living shit out of that. And what a great idea, by the way, right? That's
11FS will just have beards for all the masks. So
ours will look like you could pick who you want to be. David Blair, Lita,
like
Simon,
silver,
little ginger beard, or we are so working on that swag right now. It is terrifying. I can't wait to see that come out that way. But I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be a nice bubble, I think, an extended bubble coming out of that, where the handshake is going to be meaningful again.
Amen.
Where folks, it's about connecting with somebody. It's not just about showing them a digital product.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that that part of it will be it's going to be built into these. We're going to see we'll probably see the numbers for some of these conferences skyrocket because people are going to be so tired. As long as we have figured this out of how we do this and get people together. Another good question, by the way. I don't even have to ask you anything of the show notes that I have because the questions are so good. So Dan in London asked this one: will COVID slow down the market entry of UK challenger banks into the US? And I'll say UK, EU, in case of Revolut. Will they focus more on B2B and SME versus the consumer? So for those that aren't aware, right as the COVID news was breaking out, Revolut went ahead and announced their US expansion. We've got Monzo, with an office in LA, doing what feels like a slow rollout in the US, N26. So what do you think about that one?
Well, the first observation is going to be that the UK challenger banks, and I should say extend it to Europe within 26 and Berlin, they're so well capitalized that they can afford an astronomical dollars to acquire customers. And so that's just a decision. And I don't think their investors want them to pause. They're getting valued like they're expanding globally. Their last valuation is indicative of a global expansion. And so nothing's really going to stop that. What I'd say challenger banks overall, who are going to be the winners and losers coming out of this, primarily they're going to be in the loss category. But it's going to be mixed. I think this is going to differentiate the challenger banks that are coming to market with really unique value propositions versus the challenger banks that are saying, hey, a high yield APY. High yield savings account just isn't a differentiator. It is what consumers say they want. They want faster horses. But now that that's no longer a thing, now that we're at 0%, meaning you're making 60, 70 bips in a high yield savings account, that's not a differentiation. And a number of those challenger banks, and I won't throw any shade today, but a number of them, that's really the only thing novel about their, no pun, and the only thing novel about what they're releasing in the US. There will be some that win. I'm definitely excited about SMB challenger banks. Novo is a portfolio company of mine doing tremendously well. Rose, another fantastic honorable mention, along with the challenger banks that are specifically, and PFMs that are specifically going after the gig economy, like Joust, like Cogni, like Lance, all are really going to be winners coming out of this. But for the most part, folks don't need a high yield savings account. And that's the entire acquisition strategy of many of these UK challenger banks coming into the US.
And for those of you that are tuned in live, we're gonna work the system. So click on the like, love, whatever hell buttons they are.
Click the hate button, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Just click like crazy and don't let go of that. Alex Gillette, get all of your company to start pounding on that button. Dan, who had asked that question, I'll add in my 2 cents to that. Right before one of the hottest topics toward the back end of Q4 and at Q1 was this focus on SMBs, right? Kind of not moving away from consumer products, but the focus going on these small businesses and how you, there was a notion that they were kind of left out a little bit, right? Not as much money had gone into that direction. So I find it especially fascinating right now. That's all I'm reading about. And we had Jill Castilla on last week. We had Kurt, for the love of God, I still can't say his last name. Kurt Q, who I love, at Tab Bank, and both have been on the forefront around the SMB loans that are out there that are moving forward. I mean, Jill actually got shout outs by Mark Cuban for the work that she's done. And by the way, Citizens Edmonds Bank has a website up and they're taking applications right now. I don't think Citi is yet, by the way, just going to go there. I know that Wells Fargo has started. Bank of America is out taking these applications and throwing out some numbers that seem to be.
So, I mean, it's pretty difficult for a large institution to move that fast. I mean, you're talking about banks that take a month to approve an email footer. All of a sudden they're going to launch an application for what is like PPP is going to be the most highly consumed fintech product in the history of fintech products.
Bias, write that down. It's another good one.
Especially in the amount of time, when you think about the number of applications, there is no comparison to what's about to happen in fintech right now. Now, will that spur innovation? But I guess I'm just responding to, I think there's been naturally some snark and negativity on social about banks having trouble reacting to this and confusion between the treasurer and the SBA. Again, there's nowhere in history, possibly ever again, will compare to the number of PPP loan applications that happen just in the next 72 hours.
So I've got a friend that works at a top bank. He shall remain nameless, but he told me how he was on a call with EY, giving EY a shout out on our podcast. EY did a roundtable with the head of ops of some of the largest banks in the country, talking about COVID and the response. And my friend noted that Bank of America deployed their mortgage deferral on the web and mobile in 8 days. Let that sink in, John, because you understand that's like they understand light speed now. In 8 days, while regulation was changing hourly around this, Bank of America deployed this to the web and mobile in 8 days. That's mind-boggling.
They're hero is a strong word, but the folks that are the men and women that are working nights, weekends to make this happen. I had a conversation with somebody at Lendio late last night about the PPP application process and what's happening, and that's what those teams are doing. So, we talked about mental health and focusing on friends and family, and then you have fintechs out there like Fundera being another one, just working 7 days a week, all hours, trying to support small businesses.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think those that are diving into these and diving into the regulations as they come out and reaching out like crazy to folks, they are heroes right now. And I'm putting Jill, I'm putting Kurt in that. I'm putting a lot of the fintech companies that are addressing this. Ron Shevlin, who's a good friend of all of ours at Cornerstone Advisors and writes for Forbes, put together a great article in Forbes about fintech companies that are providing free or almost free services to banks right now in response to what's happened on the COVID space. That's actually been one of his most popular articles of all time. And it's a living document now. He keeps going out and adding to it. I think he said he added 11 companies over the weekend to that list. It's a great resource. There's an accelerator out of Oklahoma City, and I'm trying to remember the name of it right now, Stitch Crew. A small accelerator in Oklahoma City that put together an Airtable list of references all around PPP and SMB loans, state by state, federal government, access to and links to like healthcare providers and everything else, just deserve innovation. I'm going to get them on this just because.
Yeah.
To your point, John, they deserve it.
Another shout out, just Grasshopper Bank has a great resource guide. Techstars has a COVID guide. If anything, I'd say that my only knock on some of the guides that are coming out is just too much information. Yeah. So that if entrepreneurs walk away with anything, they better apply for the CARES Act in the next day or two, or Jon Zanoff is going to come knocking.
Yeah, that's actually a great piece of advice that I think now is incredibly important. It's Mike Dudas, who's with what the heck is the name of that? Mike owns now.
The Block.
The Block. So Mike Dudas, ex Venmo, ex Google Wallet, who runs The Block in New York, and Mike is a really good guy. I sat down with Mike years ago when we were in Vegas and asked him. I said, if you could give me one piece of advice to give every founder, anybody in this space, just give me a quick elevator pitch, what would you say? He said, think narrow and deep. Always think very narrow, think very deep, and that's where you'll succeed. And I think that kind of emphasizes the point you just said, John, what's immediate? And right now, if you are an entrepreneur, if you're a founder, if you haven't already applied to PPP, like you said, what are you doing?
Yep. What are you doing listening to Sam and John ramble on about
yes.
about I mean, the European breakfast show has already, you already watched that on delay. There's really nothing you have to do for the rest of the day. So
exactly. Get over to it and take care of it. I'm curious, one more question for you, because we've gone long. What are you hearing from your different founders? And I'm curious, from the people that you work with in the startup community. And like you said, this gets back to mental health, right? And the sense of community. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what I'm hearing from the bankers on my side is pretty much everything goes into 4 buckets right now. Everything they have in a roadmap, every engagement they have across the board. It's either kill, delay, reduce scope immensely, or it's a must-have and has to go forward. In those categories, that's a linear drive, right? The number of projects that are getting killed and delayed or de-scoped. That's the exercise that's going on everywhere, because no one wants to lay off staff. Nobody wants to put people on furloughs because we don't know the end game. We don't know how long we're going. So there isn't this great desire to do that.
Well, listen, I'm not going to sit on the fence there, and I don't think startup CEOs should be sitting on the fence. If you're in the camp of maybe we'll do furloughs, maybe we'll look at our overall staffing, now's the time to start to take action. It's not easy. You don't necessarily need to furlough. You can reduce compensation of the entire team. Yeah. But again, the benchmark is going to be how much cash you have in the bank in January 2021. So I don't want any founder or CEO, if you want to brainstorm about it, feel free to reach out on Twitter or LinkedIn. But without question, you need to be very mindful of your burn rate right now and taking action immediately. Don't sit on this. But your question, we talked about fundraising being top of mind. I said there's in addition to PPP, one thing that's significantly more interesting in this environment, I think accelerators are a tremendous source of capital. So obviously I ran the Fintech program for Techstars over the last several years, but whether it be the Western Union program by Techstars, the Barclays program by Techstars, the Holt Accelerator, IMB, many others, the 100 to 150K that these accelerators are offering and letting you go in a completely virtual environment, heads down and just focus on the business for the next 3 to 4 months represents a tremendous opportunity. I think, with that the value of that capital is going up, the demand and how competitive those programs are also going to go up. But that's another thing to immediately do. If you're an early stage company, you think maybe an accelerator is for me, now's the time to apply. I think the Western Union apps just closed, but Holt and Barclays are still open. I'd certainly recommend you applying for those programs. I mean, the other thing they're asking, in terms of what to do is have a strategy, have a COVID strategy, have a coming out of COVID strategy. And what do I mean by that? How's your company gonna be more successful in this environment? And we talked about focusing on the business and building a bunch of tech, but write that narrative now. Think about the arc of your story so that when you're meeting with investors in 3 months and 6 months and a year, have your story about how much you accomplished with so little resources. Have that locked down now, and then just drive towards that.
You've dropped some serious gems. I'm very proud of you.
Thanks,
on
buddy.
this little one.
I spent a little bit of time thinking about venture investing in fintech, so appreciate it.
That's really good. I think the kombucha you like downed all morning long really just, it was there. I'm proud of you for that. All right, folks, we're out of time. There are a million gems out of this. So one, we will definitely publish a link to this, and I would seriously tell you to pass this around because there's a ton of good advice in there. So John, what's the best place for people to learn more about Empire Startups, and if they want to reach out to you?
Don't even worry about it. Get your ass on a PPP loan today.
And then reach out to Jon Zanoff on Twitter.
Yeah.
Take a look at the Empire Startups, the website. We'll push some links out to that. Reach out. I mean, honestly, right now, I can tell you, John will talk to you. Reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to you. And like you said, take care of your teams. Take care of your mental health. It's really important right now. And if anything, we need community more now than anything. All right, tomorrow, we're going to be joined by Ohad Samet. He's the CEO and co-founder of True Accord. And he's also a character and a half. He's one of the driest, funniest founders I've ever met in my life. So this should be, we'll have to have like a little cue card to say he's joking right now. I'll just hold it up because you won't know. He's that good. Also, make sure you listen to Fintech Insider News Show that was released today. All US focused episode with some really great guests. So just search for Fintech Insider News where you find your podcast. Had a great interview, like I said, with Nikki, co-founder of Nova Credit, last Friday that went out. Everybody, thank you for joining. Thanks for the questions. We really do appreciate it. Apologies for LinkedIn Live technology sucking at times, but hey, we pounded through it. Stay safe and stay connected. Thanks.